Now it's time to deploy this application into the WildFly server. But before that, I would like to mention that in the application.properties file, we need to mention the logging level. The reason I need to mention this logging level is from the application perspective, we have disabled the logback. If we go back to the steps that we have implemented in the pom.xml file, if you notice here that we have excluded the logback classic from the application perspective. So when the application is bootstrapped from the WildFly server perspective, you will not be seeing any of the Spring Boot level loggings that happens automatically on the application server to track what's actually happening behind the scene of startup of this application. So what we have to do right now is just pick the application.properties and define the property name, which is logging.level.root, and mention it to the default of info. So this will help us in throwing the informations about the bootstrapping of this application on top of the WildFly server. So when we go ahead and track the information, we'll be able to capture that the Spring Boot logo pops up on the WildFly server console, and that proves that the WildFly server is able to pick up the WAR archive and it is trying to bootstrap the application. So from there on, the Spring Boot will take care of the further processing of this application by setting up all the dependencies and enabling all the configurations, auto configuration that is essentially required for the application to smoothly run on. So once we have done this setup, so what we are going to do is we are going to go to the project base structure, base directory. So going to the properties of the project, we'll be able to track the employee app, which we can bring it up. And this is a place where we are actually having the employee app residing. So here you can see there's a target directory which doesn't have any archive at present. So what we have to do is we need to right click from this base directory, and we need to launch a terminal screen. And upon launching the terminal screen, what we are going to do is we are actually going to use the mvn command to ensure the application is getting archived. So right now, let's keep this handy here. So right now we are on the target directory, and if you notice that there are no archives at present, so what we have to do right now is just hit the mvn command and use a package. So mvn command with package option will help us to generate the package out of the Spring Boot project, and we have already mentioned that the package need to be of a WAR package. So if you recall that from the application perspective, from the pom.xml's overview, we can ensure that this is referring to the WAR archive. So that instruction is already feeded into the pom.xml from the application standpoint. So it's quite good right now to go ahead and initiate the mvn package, and this will exactly package it into the WAR archive rather than the jar. So by hitting the enter command, it does all the cleaning work and ensure that it captures all the dependencies and generates a set of codes, set of directories, and as well as the archives. So here you can notice that we have finally brought the archive up into this target directory, here where the WAR archive or the jar archive will reside. So from the root directory of our project, if you just launch your mvn command, it will generate the WAR archive to get dropped straight into the target directory. So one thing that you have to notice from our application configuration standpoint is, like in the application.properties, I've pointed that spring.application.name should be employee app. But that's not the case when the archive is generated. So we need to tweak around here. The WAR archive, as you can see, the file size is 15 MB. That means it holds all the dependencies. So this is more relevant like a fat WAR, like how we call it as a fat jar. Fat jar means a jar which contains all its dependencies inside into its jar archive. Similarly, all essential dependencies that's essentially required to run these applications are residing inside the WAR file. And that's why the size of the WAR file is 15.2 MB, which captures all the web dependencies, the test dependencies. So even the Jakarta E dependencies, which we have referred, will all be stably residing inside the WAR file. Now, what we have to do is we just need to rename this file. The reason I need to rename, as I've already mentioned, from the configuration standpoint in the application properties, we have mentioned the application name to be targeted as employee app. Yes, indeed, the application name is employee app, but then the archived thing is actually taking it as an employee app, employee-app -1 as a version for that application. So we can rename that, and right now it says most relevant to the configuration that we have mentioned. That is nothing but employee app. Here also you can see that it becomes an employee app. So this archive is what we need to take it into the WildFly server and drop it there and start the server, and from there on we can see how the application is going to respond.